Right, guys, we're going to get started. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for joining the live. Today, we're going to be talking about property development, and I'm going to pass you over to Hugo. Ricardo's also on the line, 3 members of Trio. And we're going to be, as I said, we're going to be talking about property development. Before we do that, obviously property is a very hot topic at the moment, property development being very, very popular. And I just want to sort of channel you to Hugo, who's going to be talking a little bit about us, I guess, and what we've done. I guess what makes us credible in a way to be sharing and answering some of the questions that we're going to be asking today. So Hugo, over to you.
Yeah, happy to take over. Just 1 second. I think for some reason our Facebook Live dropped again.
Did it?
It keeps dropping. Yeah. It does it on its own. It just drops.
Hugo,
Yeah.
I just noticed something.
What?
On obviously on Facebook Live, it's actually given us a timeline of 3 minutes and 17 seconds. So as you go live, instead of having just a continuously run 0 to whatever.
Yeah, bro, don't do the producer one. You said something about the producer. Just do the live stream. It should be an easy one to do. Oh, it's just fucked up. Doesn't matter, but we'll do it again. It's no problem.
Yeah, what is the reason? Well, sorry, you know obviously more than I do on this. Why does it give you a time limit then of 3 minutes?
It shouldn't do. The only difference that I can see is Hugo's use that producer thing, but I don't know if that will make a difference. But
yeah, because I noticed that, and it's unusual that when we were live now, there was actually no one viewing. So
yeah, exactly. There wasn't no one viewing. Where on the first one there was like 7.
7, yeah.
I'm going to stop the live stream and start again. It keeps dropping. I don't know if it's my internet.
No, well, your internet is communicating with us as well, mate.
No, but obviously then if you're live streaming on Zoom and you're live streaming on
Facebook.
On Facebook, I was wondering whether it's causing a problem or slowing it down. Try again. Because I'm finding it might be me, but my internet is particularly slow.
I'm deleting all the other ones from our Facebook page, so now people are just going to get confused.
It's saying we're now live?
No, it might be in a second, yeah.
No, it says we're live now.
What does it?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Mine's taking a little while then to update. Okay. Are we live?
I think we are. Sorry, guys, technical issues. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. I think we're just going to get started, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great stuff, great stuff. So we'll start again. We're going to be talking about property development, guys. Obviously, property, as I said before, if you got our last video, very hot topic, but even more so property development. And we thought it would be great to start with some very basic questions on how to get into property development. But before we do that, I really want to pass you over to Hugo, who obviously drives that division. And really, I guess, if such a better word, so you guys can see the credibility and understand what we are already doing, and sort of understand how we come and what makes us or validates us to share these questions and answer them for your viewing. Hugo, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, thanks guys for joining us today, or either live or when you see this later. I thought it would be cool to just take you a little through my journey in property very, very briefly, so I can help you answer some of the questions that you might have. So my journey in property started probably about 14, 15 years ago with the other two boys on here with me, and we started initially with small properties, property development, not property development, property investment, and then slowly moved into other industries within the property world, construction, maintenance, and only really in the last couple of years have we really focused on developments. Initially sort of refurbishing small units in southwest London, and in the last couple of years we've really taken a turn, hopefully for the better, and started developing some larger stuff. In fact, I did a little presentation to show you some of the stuff that we're doing, and did a count up of the amount of plots that we've got at the moment. It surprised me, so that's quite cool. So yeah, in 2 years I think we've done really, really well. But it's still fresh, it's still new. I'm still learning as well. But I'm happy to share with you where I've got to, what I've learned, and the sorts of things that we're doing, and hopefully to help you on your development journey too. So just wanted to start by giving you a flavour of what we're doing, and then we'll move on to some questions that I think Sandra and Ricardo have got prepared for me. So I wanted to show you the developments that we're on. Bear with me. Just going to give. Here we go. So this is something that we've been developing. This one in Sutton is something that we've been developing for the last sort of 6 or 7 months. A rooftop development, really close to the city centre, town centre, should I say? And it's been done modular. So most of our stuff is done with modern methods of construction, and it was kind of one of my added values when I started to go into property development. I thought we needed to do things differently. So through the use of technology and modern methods of construction, we've been able to really do something special, I think. And I think it's going to become even more special as the developments get bigger as well, and we have more investors and equity partners involved. But this is our smallest development, and it was one of our first ones. So that's on the market now. We've got 2 of the 4 reserved. This is some of the CGIs for it. I'll just go back one so you can see. In fact, we've been able to keep it very, very close to the CGI, so you get the sort of quality we build to. This would be sort of our mid to low range, but still we do aim to have good quality finishes on all of them. We've got another one happening in Lordship Lane in Dulwich in London. So again, we took a very, very small site that most people would look at and probably not think you'd get any plots on there, and we've managed through by hook and by crook with Southwark Council, we've managed to get that through planning, and that will start. This is another one really, really interesting on Wyke Road in Rains Park. Super eco development, passive house standard, right next to the railway. Building 6-7 new apartments and a very large house. It'll all be super eco in the sense that the intent is for the houses to be able to be self-sufficient, so not need the electric board, have battery charging points in all of the houses, and also all the car parking spots are electric. So it's aiming at being the sort of new way we might look at property. And this is going to be not our biggest development, but definitely one of our most interesting ones. And then on the next one, did I skip it? Yeah. On the next one, we've got something in West Drayton. I'm saying 7 to 9 apartments because we're going through appeal at the moment on the 9 apartments. But if that doesn't go through, then we'll probably get 7. And again, this is a combination. Everything that I'm showing you is modular. So we always build off site where we can, either panelized systems or full volumetric. We minimize, precast concretes and stuff like that. We try to minimize the work on site to keep Ricardo happy. And yeah, so this is another really interesting one, just off the high street in an area that's really changing with the eventual arrival of Crossrail. And then I didn't put too many photos up of the other ones because either we don't have them because they're in planning, or didn't want to bore you with too many projects. But that's the sort of list that we've got going on at the moment. You'll notice that most things are sort of below 10 apartments, but actually some of our newer stuff that we're doing now is going to be 20 apartments plus. So we've got something in Beckenham, and we've got 45 apartments. I've put in there Southeast London because we're in the middle of negotiations. So I hope you can understand that I can't share exactly where that is yet. But that puts our pipeline at 119 units, which is crazy, actually, thinking that 3 years ago we did our first one development. So that's amazing. Yeah, it's a real prop to the team, myself and the guys for doing doing that. That's really good. So yeah, hopefully 119 turns to 200, turns to 300. The idea is to keep growing, but to keep also doing it in modern methods of construction, to keep embedding technology into the home so people can live better and live with the help of technology. And we can probably talk about that on another session where I share some of the technological stuff that we're doing. But that's my introduction. Hopefully,
fantastic.
Gives you a flavour of what I'm doing.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you. Very exciting stuff. I think you and I think Ricardo, we had no idea how many units there were. For some reason, I was around the 40, 60. So to have another 60 on top, just literally.
Yeah. It was the Beckenham deal and the other deal at 45
That's right.
apartments that's really pushed it up. But yeah, no, it's exciting.
Very exciting to see it on paper. Thank you, Hugo. Good work. Definitely good work there for sure. Been working hard. So I guess let's get down to the questions. We really want to keep this below a certain time frame just for you guys to get as much juice as you can on this video. So I guess we're going to start with the first question, Hugo. And I think it's one that I guess everyone can relate to. And it's how and what do I need to get into property development? I think the audience would like to know that question.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, because I said, I've only been doing it for 3 years, so fairly fresh, right? So I think like most things in life, you've got to have a passion or an interest in it. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to get into. Property development, like I suspect a lot of other industries, is going to throw some curveballs, and passion and interest will keep you going. So those are two key things that you have, and you can develop a passion for it. You might just now be interested, and then once you get into it, you really like it, and it becomes a passion, which was exactly what happened to me. Can't say I was passionate about it initially, but now I sort of sleep, breathe the thing. So I've become very passionate about it. So I think that's really important. I think the next thing is education. You need to get educated. You need to understand the terminology. You need to understand how property deals work, the legals around property deals, all the types of different property deals, all the different structures. So it's really important you get educated. How you do that, I suspect there's some courses out there that can help. We'll be running some of those as well in the future. But also, I think even if you just work with someone who's in the game, that will, education through practice is always great, in my opinion. So you need to get your head around all the terms and all the processes and how long things take. So it's really important you do that. I think, like most things in life, networking is what got me here, or got us here. So just knowing an architect, knowing a broker, knowing a bank, all of these things will help you get your head around property development. Making sure that network is wide, and use it. Call people up regularly, make sure that they know that you're interested. And the whole point of that is then to get to the point of experience and leverage. So it's really difficult to get into property development if you've got no experience. So what I would suggest is you need to get into a position of having experience, whether you do that with you leverage someone else's experience. So you came to us, for example, and said, I've got something, we could develop it together. That's a possibility. So you're leveraging our experience to get you on the board. But without experience, it's tough approaching banks. Just bear that in mind. But the other key thing, I think, is start small. So if you do 1 or 2 small developments, whether that's converting a 1-bed to a 2-bed or converting a house into 2 apartments, essentially refurbishments, then that's a good way in. It's a good way to get into the property development world. Now, I've got a property development friend in Sydney that says building 10 apartments or 100 apartments is the same headache, and he's absolutely right. But it's also a lot bigger risk if you're doing 100, and it's a lot less risk if you're doing 10. So my argument for that is, if you can do 10, you can do 100, but you've got to do the 10 first. Yeah. So just start small, start with 1 or 2, grow into, you'll notice on that list that I shared with you guys, our first one, which wasn't on that list, was 1 apartment. Then it became 4. Yeah. More recently, it was 7, 8. Now we're moving to 20, 44. There's a reason for that. The banks and everyone around you appreciates you seeing the growth. So, I don't want to deter anyone from big deals, but just be aware of that. So I think that's the few important things. So passion or interest. I think education is key. Must network. There's no option not to. And then start small and leverage someone else's experience.
100%.
Sure.
Some fantastic points there, Hugo. Thank you. I guess the next natural question would be, how would I go, if it was myself getting into this business, how would I go about finding my first development?
Do you know what? It's going to sound silly, but I think it's always the traditional deal, the traditional methods that I think work well, in my opinion. So I would always say get friendly with agencies. Most land deals never make it online. So you'll find that most land deals, and especially the best ones, aren't going to be on Rightmove or aren't going to be on online portals, in my opinion anyway. This is me sharing my opinion. Agencies get them first. Land agents, a lot of agencies have land departments within them. Get friendly with them. Make sure you have an idea of what you're looking for, what you want to do, what areas you want to cover. Don't be too broad too quickly. So maybe pick an area that you understand and know. Find a few local agents, and they're going to be really the ones that are going to call you up because they want to make a sale. And like I said, most of those things never actually make it online. So definitely start with agencies. Mm-hmm. I think I already said it, but I'll keep saying it, networking. So if you network at property events, inevitably there are going to be people there that are going to know of land deals or know people that have land deals. So that's always a good and important source. You can do some local ads as well. So it's not unusual for, putting up some, obviously right now at these times, coffee shops and bars and everything else is closed. But if in different times, having a little bit of a notice board in an agent or a local coffee shop or something like that can be helpful. But I would definitely say agencies are a good port of call, especially if you don't have experience. You can leverage their experience a little bit as well. So I would say definitely start with that, in my opinion. There are more sophisticated ways of starting to look for land, software and everything that can help you. But I think agencies initially are going to be a good port of call.
Sure.
So you might know land. So you might know a friend of a friend. So when I say network, I don't mean just go to networking events. Network within your own current network, your own friends, your own family. I always say every conversation is a sale conversation, even if it's with your mum. So just let everyone know that you're looking, and you'd be surprised what comes back.
Yeah, thank you. No, for sure. I think it's important just to highlight on that. There are even there are agents, even though they're very sales driven, and you're an amateur starting out. There are people that would want to work with you. So don't lose that focus. Don't lose that initiative of going out there and really trying to just share and talk about what you want to do. Because like myself, Hugo, and Ricardo, we will work with individuals that want to get into property and obviously have something to share, and whether they've got a deal, whether they've got a plot that, they don't know what to do with. There are people out there, they're not just operating on a higher level. They will look to work with you too, regardless if you're an amateur. I just thought it would be important to say.
Yeah, definitely. I think people can buy into your passion and interest, right? So if you're really interested in something, they're really willing to give you a chance. So, because it's their interest as well, right? That's what agents do. So if you're interested in land, they sell land. Exactly. Inevitably they're gonna give you some time. So definitely start there, is my opinion.
Yeah. So I think the next question is definitely one that everyone's got on their mind. How do you fund these deals?
Fund the deal.
How can I fund these deals? How can I get deposit? How can I get them over the line?
Yeah. See, I would have initially said funding is the hardest thing, but then I got into planning, and that became the hardest thing. But funding is difficult. And you know, this whole thing about you can do this with no money. You need money, right? There's no ways about it. Whether that's a bank, an equity partner, so someone who's lending you money is what I mean by that. So money is needed. Yeah, anything from basic legals to obviously buying the land. So I think there's a few key areas, and this comes back to the experience and leverage. It's very, very, very tough to get development finance if you can't show an element of experience, but not impossible. So there are banks out there who would lend, but they will just lend at higher rates because they can't. You know, you don't have enough experience. So for the best banks, for the best rates, you have to show experience. If you don't have a lot of experience, that's okay. There are banks there that will lend to you. But then the condition of it might be that you need to put in a contractor that has the experience, if that makes sense. So just when you're looking at financing, just be aware of that. If you're going to go to a bank, which most people will for the first charge, as they call it, or senior debt, then they're going to lend you 55, 60% of GDV, gross development value. And then it will be at that point that they'll say, well, what experience have you got? And you could be honest and say, listen, me personally, I've got no experience, but I've got a team around me and they do, and you will get lending. So that's the first thing. So bank lending is the most important thing. You need bank lending. And when I say bank lending, I don't mean just the high street banks. They do lend as well. But actually, there's a lot and lots of private capital firms in London and all over the world, but basically in London that would lend on property deals and property development. So again, network, get acquainted with brokers or banks direct and start doing that. I probably speak to 4 different lenders a week at the moment. And I'm talking lenders, not brokers. So I'm talking directly to the banks. So, but vary it because brokers sometimes have good contacts. Private equity, or this is essentially the money that you would put in. You can there are private equity partners. We're one of them. So you have a lot of people who have the equity to put into deals and will be interested in sharing a deal with you. That's another way of funding. So private equity is important. There's a few firms out there that do that for a living. And there's things like mezz finance. So that's a second charge. So to top up the finance. So funding is available. There are a lot of funders. I could go on Google right now, search funding for property development. I'll easily find 3 or 4 pages of useful information. I think the key areas are they're going to want to see experience. So either you're leveraging off someone who does, or you're putting a team together that does. Funding is actually a lot easier than most people think. It's harder to get a buy-to-let mortgage, in my opinion, than it is to get development finance. The only caveat tends to be experience. So just bear that in mind. And it's more expensive to do this stuff as well. So, you know, for development finance, there's lots of valuation reports that you've got to pay for, etc. So you just have to be aware there's some costs around development finance that most people don't take into account. So be aware of that. I probably can do a whole half hour on funding. But that hopefully gives you a good summary.
Good. No, but just on that note as well, is it fair to say, Hugo, that, you know, between people, good networking, good connections, and meeting the right individuals with limited money, could you do your first property development deal? Let's just say if I find a plot and, you know, I have no money, but just being around and networking around the right people, we can make it come together. I think it's important to answer.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's well, we're living proof of that. So we haven't in our first few developments actually had to put in. We've put in some money, but not huge amounts. We were able to get debt finance and private equity and find partners to do deals. So yeah, it's 100% possible. I don't want to deter anyone from it. Funding is out there. The UK and London especially is full of cash. So it's going to be perseverance that's going to get you there. So I don't be afraid. Funding doesn't have to be the issue. In fact, funding isn't the issue normally, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cool.
Good points again, Hugo. Good points again. So I think you touched base earlier on this. I think you know, in terms of someone unexperienced, we might want to know a little bit more in depth regarding this subject. So, you know, I've just started out what type of development should that person should aim for? So should she or he start on a small conversion, or a completely new build as a first development? What would you recommend?
It's a tough one, because I think sometimes refurbs can be more difficult than new builds, and I think, Ricardo, you'd relate to that on a building side. Sometimes it's easier to build from scratch than it is to refurb a current building, and I think that goes the same with property development. I mean, I'll share my experience. So our first one was a refurb, and it wasn't very successful in terms of profit margin. But our second one was a new build, and it was much more successful. But I think that's not to say that refurbs can't be successful. I think it all comes down to numbers, to be honest. If the numbers work, either on new build or refurbishments, then they work. The only thing I would say is that there's pros and cons. Obviously, with refurbs, a lot of the time you're not having to deal with complicated structural stuff and complicated planning, so that's a bonus. But on the other side, you might have complicated contracting, because you've got all, old buildings, old wiring, and stuff that sometimes you just can't see until you open it up. So there's that. On the other side, on new build, it tends to be a lot easier to build because you're starting from the ground up. But then you've got to go through either planning or discharge conditions with the council. So there's a few more. The only other benefit from new build is actually the help to buy scheme. So if you are selling on the open market and you're selling a new build, and it's within the 600k in London anyway, then you can, people that can get help to buy can get up to 95% mortgages. And that's always helpful on a help to buy, to be able to say that, I've got the whole market there for me. But I wouldn't deter one or the other. I think both would work. The funding for either is absolutely fine as well. It's going to be your appetite and the deal numbers. Just make sure the deal numbers work. So I would say either or. I wouldn't deter one or the other.
Cool. Great stuff. So I guess now the question is, first time getting into development, do I aim at with or without planning?
That's a tough one. Okay, so I would say if you've got no experience, I would definitely go for something with planning if you've got no experience. I think the planning process, although it can be very lucrative, a lot of people make more money out of planning than they do out of building. Not always, but that is possible. It is a long process. It is an arduous process, and it can be an expensive process. So, and you need a good team around you to get the planning, especially, and actually with planning, one of the greatest things about planning is being able to see something that others don't. And if you've got no experience, it's very difficult to see that, right? So I would say if you're getting into property development now and you can find the funding, I would aim for something with planning or outline planning, which is like a lighter version of full planning. And then perhaps even if it's got full planning, you can always go in to add in another apartment or something like that, which is a smaller scale of planning. So I would say go into something that's got planning. It will get your head around lending. It will get your head around the terminology. And then start looking at stuff without planning. And then without planning, you're probably looking to buy it on an option, so subject to planning. But we'll have a whole session on that as well. But I would definitely say buy with planning for now, until you feel a little bit more comfortable with the councils and the planning process, just because it can be tough.
And just for our audience that is a little bit more risky, if you like, or is willing to take the plunge and engage on a plot that has no planning, would you advise them to, I guess it will depend on the size of the deal, but you can share some awareness on that. Would you advise them to opt for a pre-app initially, or not necessarily?
Yeah, generally, I mean, I've had mixed experiences with pre-apps, but if you're going to buy something without planning at all, and you're not buying it subject to planning, i.e. you're buying just the land, and then once you've bought the land, you're going to go get the planning. If you can arrange with the landowner to give you some time to get a pre-app, that's great. But if you can't, then at least check some basics. Check if it's in an area of flooding, check if it's in an area of natural beauty, check if it's in an area of tree protection, if it's in there's all sorts of things that could mean that although it looks like it can get planning, there's going to be so many objections, it's be very, very difficult to get planning. So that's why I say no experience sometimes can hurt you in land with no planning. So you just have to be careful. What I would suggest is, if you are going to buy something without planning, and that's on the forefront of your mind, then, and you've never done it before, please buy it subject to planning. So make sure you get an option agreement with the owner. Make sure you're allowed to get the planning before you commit to purchase it, just in case, because there are some horror stories out there of people buying land thinking they're going to get planning and then they don't, and then they're stuck. So just be careful. If anything, use your network, run it by some experienced friends. This isn't something that you have to do alone. Although most people think it is, but by all means, there's lots of people out there, even competitors, so to speak, other people that might be friends of yours that develop, that are happy to share their experiences. So be careful, but I would say definitely with planning first. If you can, do a pre-app and get subject to planning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. I'd like to ask the next question. It's a bit more in-depth question, but I think it's very useful, and I'm sure you can do a 30-minute topic on it, Hugo.
Yeah.
And this always goes back to obviously educating yourself. But to start it off, for the people that don't know, what is GDV and why is it so important?
Oh, so GDV stands for gross development value. It's probably, it's an important one because the banks use it, right? So GDVs, LTVs, loan to values and stuff like that. So GDV essentially means what gross revenue are you going to generate from that site?
Mm-hmm.
So if an apartment is 250 grand and you've got 4 of them, the GDV on that site would be $1 million in simple terms. I think that's one of many important things when you're coming to buy land. Obviously, GDV is important. Loan to values from the banks are important, but there's loads of other things that you need to be aware of cost-wise. What does build costs look like? What professional fees look like? Understanding the cost is actually just as important as understanding the revenue on a piece of land. There's things like internal rate of returns, return on capital employed. So there's loads of terminologies. I don't want to scare anyone because some of them are just for accountants to bother with. But I think the key ones would be sort of GDV cost of build. When I say cost of build, I mean everything that's in the cost of build. That includes all the professional fees around it, any government sanctions or sections that you've got paid towards. So Section 106, SEAL, which is the per square meter payments per council that you've got to pay. So you need to get your head around the cost. So the three key areas are what's the gross revenue, what's the cost, and therefore what you can maybe pay for the land. Those are the 3 key areas, and around that there's other things, but those are the 3 key areas. And I think in development, people always kind of break that into thirds. So if in simple terms, if the revenue was $1 million, then everyone expects it to be sort of 330,000 for the land, 330,000 for the cost of build, and 330,000 profit margin, gross profit margin. But be careful with that. I mean, that's not a bad guideline, but sometimes the costs can be a lot higher than that, so just be careful. So but yeah, those are the key things: GDV, revenue, total cost of build, and all the things that go in it. And like you said, you could easily do 30 minutes on that, if not a whole day. And then what are you buying the land for, and what that looks like. When I say buy the land, I mean the land costs and everything around it: stamp duty, agency fees, legal fees, etc. Does that help?
Very clear.
Very clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I think that leaves us with the last question. I think we're in good time. And we've spoke about this throughout most of the questions, and we touched base on that one. And it comes back to people and teams. I think you said it earlier, we are living proof that, a lot of where we are has been built on relationships. And I think it's fair to say. So the question is, Hugo, what kind of people and teams do does someone starting out, or, you know, even someone that isn't starting out, need around them? What's their team look like?
What does my team look like? I'll describe to you what team I've got, and I think it's becoming a successful team, and then maybe that help people. I think the first and foremost, regardless of who they are or what trade they're in, I think they've got to be on your wave. What I mean by that is, if you're into modern methods of construction, into doing something the way we are, do something cool, do something different, risk within reason, solution driven. You know, nothing's ever a problem. It's all solution driven. You've got whoever you get around you has to have that same sort of mentality, in my opinion. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. It doesn't mean you have differences of opinion. That's absolutely fine. In fact, if anything, that's healthy. But I think you've all got to have the same sort of attitude, in my opinion. So that's number one, and I think that's really important. And I think after that, more technically, I think there's two major things that you need in terms of planning. And that's an architect and a planning consultant. Those are the two key people. Architect for design, planning consultant for understanding the planning process if you're going through planning. And I always tend to use firms that are London-based predominantly, so they understand the market that we're in, and also firms that are run and owned by the owner. So most of the stuff that we do, I know the owner personally. It doesn't mean I deal with them every day, but I know the owner personally. I can give him a call or her a call. And I always just feel like that those companies are more receptive and are, you know, happy to get more involved as well, and happy to help kind of make our dream come true, so to speak. Not trying to be too cheesy, but they if they get on board with what you're trying to do, and that's the owner of that company, he's going to use his resources to best serve you. Or he or she can best serve you. So I think architects and planning consultants are two very important people. And then you've got all the supporting ones, especially when you're doing the build, and they work with Ricardo a lot. So measuring surveyors, mechanical and electrical, structural engineers, environmental engineers, noise and sound and vibration engineers. These are all people that service the construction. So construction actually is more complicated than it looks, you know. And I know we all see the finished building, but behind that, there's a lot of technicalities that you've got to resolve, and that requires a good group of people to do it. And it also requires a good group of people that are happy to communicate. So I'm very fond of using technology, as you guys know. So I use every gimmick going online to make sure that everyone communicates all together. There's no, I'll have an email with Hugo. No, the M&E consultants in our emails, the structure, sorry, not in our emails, in our conversations, the M&Es, everyone is talking together. Even if it's not in their subject, they're aware of what's going on. And that was a very important part for me to do this, is I wanted the team to be really connected. So how I found this team, networking, friends of friends, architect recommended someone and we liked them. You know, it could all happen like that. And don't be afraid to try someone out. But I think always go with your gut. Sometimes you see someone and it doesn't quite marry with your personality, or you don't think it's going to work. Don't be afraid to say no. There's plenty more people out there. But I would say that's the most important thing. And then actually, the team around you more broadly. So I'm very lucky to got Sandra and Ricardo with me. Because sometimes you do need a few people around you to get you out of a rut, because inevitably you're going to come across lots of problems. Property development is tough. It's enjoyable, but it's tough. You'll have a couple of sleepless nights. You've got councils that aren't always on your side. You've got things that happen in construction sites that don't help you. If you guys want to, and we had time, we can go through a few of the projects there and I can give you some high level ideas of what happened on a couple of them and how we might have resolved them. So all of those things are really, really important. So have a good team around you that is maybe some friends and business partners, and then the technical team, definitely architects and planning consultants, and then all the other trades around that as well.
Thank you very much. So if I was to highlight the three important keys on these guys, what I really took away from what Hugo shared, team, passion, and experience. I guess those three will join everything together. You know, you'll have the right team, which brings the experience. And like anything in life, and Hugo mentioned this at the beginning, you got to have a passion for it, because he's gone through some difficult times. We've gone through some difficult times on technicalities that, you know, we didn't see coming, but it's all part of the process. And I think passion is the fuel to keep going and overcome and find a solution. So
yeah, exactly. And inevitably,
passion.
when you're doing something new, like we were when we started developing 3 years ago, it's new. It's new to you anyway. So things are gonna go wrong. So as long as you're comfortable with that, and I think that's the point, is get comfortable with the fact that things are gonna come up that you've not dealt with before. Why would you if you've never done it? But just know that there's always a way through it. I think that's the key. I think I struggled with that at the beginning. I'm probably better at it now, but a few sleepless nights helped with that.
For sure.
Yeah. And then, like I said, the passion you don't have to have from the beginning, and interest is good enough, and you can develop a passion. It's very hard to be passionate about something that you've not at least spent some time doing. So definitely, if you have an interest, go for it. If it develops into a passion, you're going to love it, is my opinion.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Ricardo. I really want to end it with, as Hugo said at the beginning, we are planning to create some workshops on training around this, but not sort of your cliche type workshop. It's more about bringing individuals in and having them as partners and as, you know, let us be your network. And I think if you want to get in contact with us, whether you have a plot, whether you've got some interest on property development, we've got solutions at Trio-the Different showing up. By all means, send us an email, let us know what you got going on, what you'd like to do, anything we can do for you. It's all about, and Hugo's very good at this, bringing people together and bringing great teams together and really understanding where we're at and where we're going to go. And then obviously we'll build the in-between, if that makes sense. So thanks, guys. Is there anything you want to add, Hugo, Ricardo? Anything you want to say?
No, I think that's it. I think I just wanted to give people an idea of you know, what's happened in the last 3 years. And you know, I could talk till the cows come home about this now, because I'm so passionate about it. But if the questions and the answers helped people, then that's great. But equally, you know, there might be some more technical questions that people have and stuff like that, whether it's in my network or Sandra Ricardo's network. By all means, get in contact with us. You know, we're happy to share. You know, I'm not. You know, I think you're your own competition in life, so I don't think if other people are developing, that should be your competition. You are your competition. So I'm always happy to share my experiences, and if anything, it helps me sleep better at night. So
it does to us
by
all,
all means, get in contact.
For sure. Great stuff. Ricardo, anything on your end?
No. I hope that this has been useful for everyone, and that they've enjoyed our contribution towards this side, if they are of interest. And obviously, as you said earlier, Sandra, you know, our details are there on your screen. So please get in contact if you have any more questions, or if you do want to get involved, and the industry or this particular section on developments is something that you've always wanted to get into. So, yeah.
Good stuff. We're planning to do more of these Get Into series, guys. So we'll do another one next week on a different